that time by the boys. Hey, Kyle. Let's close that door. Oh, Poppy's good. All right. Let's get everybody's attention. Let's focus forward. Give me a few minutes of your time. I'd appreciate that very much. You've already found out y'all had a good day today. I'm glad to hear that. Again, you young men, I'm awful proud of you. You showed the girls up. That may be the first time that's ever happened. So, good job. Give yourselves a hand. Y'all deserve it. Now, let's jump right on into what we got for tonight. Show of hands. I don't need a lot of work now. Have y'all ever had somebody that made a real big impression on you, a lasting impression on your life? And, all right. Have you had somebody do it? Can you name somebody? Okay, and that's a very good answer, because our parents a lot of times do make, whether it's a good or bad, they make an impression on our lives. Yeah. Your grandfather. Yeah, a lot of young men, that's their answer, or young women do. Yeah, jump right on up to the big one. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, sir. Your grandfather. Yeah. He makes a big impression. He's made a lot of big impressions on a lot of lives. I can assure you that. Look at that. Yes, Cam. Your dad. A lot of people's dad. That's right. All right. Now, what about, and this is for anybody, what about, has anybody ever had somebody make a really lasting impression in their life, even though they wasn't in their life for just a short period of their life? Have you ever had that happen? Anybody? Kids, adults, all of us. Anybody had that happen to them? And what I'm saying, right now we're talking about just impressions. We're not talking about necessarily great or good or bad or whatever. We're just something that someone that made an impression in your life. Anybody had that happen? They wasn't in your life for very long, but they did make an impression, a big impression in your life. Yeah. Okay. No, I know what you mean. Okay. So you're talking about Linda. Yeah. She was in your life a short while, but made a big impression. Anybody else?
Coach Spooner?
Coach Spooner, that's right. That's a really good answer, especially when you go to play a sport outside of maybe just your hometown or high school sport. That coach is going to be a short period of time, but they have the opportunity to make a really big impression in your life. Anybody else?
I thought about the year I taught Lee in the fourth grade, which was the same year that he got killed.
Yes.
He had only been in our classroom for 6 weeks, so I only spent 6 weeks with him as a teacher. But still, forever.
It's a last impression. Yeah. And I'll just give you a couple of examples myself. Now, the first one I'm going to give you is, I don't know why there's an impression in my life on this, but when I was in basic training in the Navy, I would have been 19 years old. So that's been like 3 or 4 years ago, or something like that. It was, but there was a kid in my company that I never had a conversation with. Now, one time did me and him ever having just a one-on-one conversation. Now, we were in groups together, obviously, and things like that. His name was Joffrey. Last name was Joffrey. And that's all we knew was each other's last name for the most part. But it was Joffrey. Now, there was 100 and some people in my company. And I probably can't name 15 of them to you today. But for some reason, I can still say Joffrey. As a matter of fact, about a year later, I would see Joffrey in Yokosuka, Japan. And we would literally just walk by each other and not say a word to each other. But I remember that. It impressed me then. Hey, I was in basic training with that kid. Now, and at 19, 20 years old, about 20 years old, you go, now he's got to live in Japan. That impressed me that he was able to do that. Now, we didn't speak. Like I said, to this day, I've never had a conversation with this guy. For some reason, though, he's impressed in my memory. I have an impression, a lasting impression. Can't even tell you why. But that's the thing, is that there's things in life that will impress us, and it'll stick with us. Now, I'm going to give you another example of mine, and this one I do know what it is. When I was a boy growing up, there was a man, a pastor, a preacher, by the name of Paul Cornett. And I mean, he
He
was,
left an impression on all of us.
well, he did, but even though he never was at our home that many times, I mean, I guarantee you, he was never at our home more than 5 times in my life.
I remember when he was though.
But here was the thing, when Paul Cornett was at your house, about 2 o'clock in the morning, or just any time during the night, all of a sudden you might wake up and hear him praying. Middle of the night. He's an old man, you know, but he'd be praying. And then you might go back to sleep, and you might wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and Paul was probably praying. And it impressed on me, and to this day I can still hear him praying in the night like that. I mean, I can hear it in my head as clear as anything. It impressed on me the importance of prayer, the power of prayer, and how important it is that there are people that pray and pray earnestly. That was the impression that it was on me. That was y'all probably heard, well, I've said it, you maybe remember, I have preached before about praying in the mornings, and praying in the noontime, and praying in the evenings, and then praying in the midnight hour when you can't sleep. When you can't sleep for some reason, you pray. Use it at the right time, because that's what Paul did. And that's where that was the impression it had on me. So you see, even though, honest to goodness, I probably never was around for Paul Cornett more than 5 times, and I never held an actual conversation with him. I was too young. He impressed me so. And for any of you that remember Brother Donnie Redmond, I promise you, he impressed you as well. You would remember his prayer life and the way he prayed in his church. And if you got to know him a little bit better, you'd know how he prayed all over this place. And he always did. But that's it. I mean, those were things, lasting impressions in my life. And honestly, they were based off of very little interaction. Yet they had such a powerful, impression on me. Anybody else want to share any kind of impression that you think of? Yes. Coach Chuck, that's very good. Coach Chuck Glass over at Bonifay. Wonderful man, preacher, Christian, I believe a true man of God. He worked with the high school basketball players there at Bonifay. And just they loved him, he loved them. He was a wonderful guy. But he was taken out. I mean, it's one of those coach stories, but then Brother Chuck died. It was that been a year and a half ago now, something like that. So somewhere along the 2 years, yeah, something like that. And gone. But that's an impression you'll always remember. Those are people that impress on you. And the thing with him is that impression is a godly impression. He was like that. But now I want to tell you about a few things that are lasting, fleeting impressions in your lives or in our lives. How many of you, show of hands, know who Cain and Abel are? Just raise your hand. Now, keep your hand up. Somebody want to tell me what you know about Cain and Abel? Who wants to tell me about it? Who did what? Speak up. Everybody. Cain killed Abel. That's what else do you know about it? Anybody? Well. But not cats. Yeah. Do you know anything else? Will?
Cain was jealous. Cain was jealous.
Yes, Cain was jealous because God liked Abel's sacrifice, right? Yes, sir. Yeah. So, I mean, here's all of y'all talking and telling me about a couple of brothers that you never met, and you only get this. What I put in. Everything basically that we know about Cain and Abel was written in one chapter in the Bible. One chapter. In the 4th chapter of Genesis, you can read about Cain and Abel. That was about 6,000 years ago. Now, what do you think about Cain? Anybody? What do you think about Cain? Somebody? Yes, ma'am.
He let sin overpower his,
He let
his
sin,
emotions lead him
yes,
to sin.
to lead him to sin. And sin leads to death. Yes, sir. He was a bad dude. What does anybody think? What do we know about Abel? What do you think about Abel? Anybody? Okay, probably a decent guy. So here, you know, we know these people. They've made an impression in our lives because we think of them as the first two kids on earth and stuff like that. Yet that was 6 years now. Yeah. But this was 6,000 years ago, and all we know about them is written in one chapter in the Bible, and that's it. Yet there's an impression. I would dare say half of the world's population knows who Cain and Abel are. So that's a big impression, don't you think? Pretty big impression. Well, now let me ask you about another guy. Show of hands once again. How many of y'all ever heard of Samson? Anybody? Yeah. Samson. Tell me something significant about Samson. Hands raised. Just that way. He had long hair. Why did he have long hair? Well, good. Okay. All right. Well, he was a Nazarite. That's why. We'll explain that later from each other. Will, go ahead before you break. Yeah, he had strength within that, right? Killed a lot of people. Yes, sir, Brandon. Killed a lion with his bare hands. Yeah. No, not the Israelites. Just man. Okay. Anybody? How did he get crushed by a bill? Okay. Why did? Okay. Yes. Will.
Because he didn't do it himself, kind of.
Yeah.
Didn't he put his hand on his side, he made it go down?
Yeah. Anybody else? What else do we know? What else y'all know about Samson?
I was just gonna say he was weak for a woman.
Weak for a woman, man. That is the absolute truth. That was Samson, David, Solomon. I mean, the list is long. I'll go ahead and tell you, if you ever get young men, our weakness, our greatest weakness in this world, and I'm not saying this to be ugly, is women. And that's not being ugly, but that's the truth. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But just understand that. They're the greatest gift God gave us, and they're also our greatest weakness. Anybody else got anything else about Samson? Cam, did you have something about Samson?
Yeah, it was a question. Did he let the villains fall?
Well, he kind of had to be part of it. Well, let me give you just a short list here. Y'all covered almost every one of them. He tore a lion apart with his bare hands. He scooped bees and honey out of a lion's carcass just to eat it. He killed 30 Philistines, took their garments to settle a bet. He left his first wife in a fit of anger. He caught 300 foxes, tied their tails together in pairs, attached a firebrand to their tails, and let them loose. They destroyed the standing corn, vineyards, and olive groves of the Philistines. He broke free of the ropes that bound him. He killed 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. He tore down the city gates of the city, and then he toted them and moved them to a hilltop. He fell in love with Delilah, who betrayed him. And he pulled down the 2 middle pillars of the temple, killing himself and over 1,000 Philistines. All right, y'all named almost every one of them. We know a lot about Samson. There's movies made, yeah.
Quick question, did he ask for the strength to be able to do that?
He did.
He asked God for just that little
Yeah,
bit?
because the truth is it's like most things, his strength wasn't in his hair. It wasn't in his hair. His hair was a symbol of his devotion to God. And because of him being petty and being as he was, and that hair getting cut off, that was God took his presence from him. But, that was what it is. But in that story, what you do find out there at the end is that Samson recognized his sin and recognized his dependency on God. And he recognized his own failure. And he asked God for that intervening. And he didn't even ask to be saved. He simply asked to give him the strength to do what he should have been doing all along. And that's what he does. But all of that, he done all these things, and y'all know a bunch about it. Like I said, there have been movies made about it. Samson lived about 3,000 years ago. And everything he done is covered in 4 books in the Bible. Or 4 chapters in which book of the Bible? Anybody tell me? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. What book of the Bible? No. Boy, how I'm bad. We fix to start Bible class. No. Come on, where's the story of Jonah or Samson? Come on. You know what? Not in Kings, no. This is actually one that...
Is this the New Testament?
Huh?
Is it the New Testament?
It's the Old Testament. This is one that actually gets along with it. Come on. This is a little extra credit here. No.
Genesis.
Hey, the great part is y'all consider just randomly naming stuff and you're probably not going to.
Genesis, Exodus,
It's not in Samuel.
Nope, not in Samuel. Let me tell you, if you know anything about your history, your Bible history, this would be before the Kings. Judges, thank you. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Samson. Samson, no, I know that wasn't coming out of that mind right there, I did. But hey, I appreciate you that. And Corey, I'm sorry I didn't hear you say it. The book of Judges. Now, if you'll read the book of Judges, it's a pretty awesome book. And most people don't even think about the book of Judges. But anyway, 3,000 years ago, a story that we know very well, a big impression on us, and it's covered in just 4 chapters in a book that most people don't even remember from the Bible. That's what an impression is, a lasting impression on you. Let's move on to another. I ain't gonna keep going much longer. Anybody heard of a guy named Jonah? Let's see them hands. Anybody see it? Heard of a guy named Jonah? Let me ask you this. Hands raised, don't blurt out. What do you know about Jonah? Yes, him. He was in a well for 3 days, in the belly of a great fish, right? All right, now hold on before we say anything else. Can anybody tell me anything about Jonah other than about the great fish? Go ahead.
He was like spreading the gospel of God came to the city where that was dangerous.
Which is all part of the well story.
Yeah.
I said anything, I need something outside of the well story. Yes.
Okay, well, they were on like a ship and
That's part of the well story. Somebody got something about Jonah,
I was saying like he like stopped the school.
which is part of the well story, or the great fish story. Can anybody tell me anything about Jonah outside of the story of the great fish? Yeah, he was. Well, actually, that would probably be debated. Jonah was a hard-headed son of a gun. He reminded me of, I don't know, somebody. I can't remember. But anyway. All right, so nobody can tell me anything else. Now, don't be cheating, and it's okay if
Are
you
you
can.
saying like what his mission was?
No, about something about Jonah. Or something about his life outside that does not pertain.
He was married.
Okay. What?
He was
He- Huh? Well, that whole is part of that. Now, well, let me just say it like this. Let me put it to you like this. The book of, or well, actually, what book of the Bible do we know about, or do we read the story of Jonah in? Yeah, y'all got that one right. That was easy. All right. How many, don't be looking, how many chapters are in the book of Jonah?
3.
No. 4. Who said 4? Who said 4? It's 4. There's 4 chapters in the book of Jonah. Now, how many chapters cover the story of the great fish? 2. Now, let's keep going. How many verses are in those 2 chapters? 27 verses. And I know you guessed, that's why it's crazy. But hold on, listen to me. Listen to me. Now answer this question. How many verses are in the Bible? How many?
20,260.
No, it's not. The Bible is, this is the Bible.
3,678.
There are 31,102 verses in this Bible. 27 of those verses are about Jonah and the whale, and that story that we know so well. And how many of us actually know that story that well? You know what I mean? Where was he going?
He was going to the enemy.
No, where was he going? Yes. Tarshish, that's right. He was going to
Yeah,
Tarshish.
that was like his country's like.
What, okay, ask me this, what was wrapped around his head? Huh?
No, wasn't it like vines, like?
No?
A turban.
No? No?
The ones?
What was wrapped around his head?
There was something wrapped around his head.
Seaweed was wrapped around his head while he was in the belly of the whale. See, what I'm saying is, what we know is that he was in the belly of the whale. We don't even really know, for the most part, the whole story of even those 27 verses.
How do we know if yes, seaweed?
It don't matter, because here's what my point is. 27 verses. That means there's 31,075 verses in this Bible that's not about Jonah and the way he. All right? So you know what? Every one of us know who Jonah is. How many of you think that people that don't even go to church have heard of Jonah and the whale? A lot of people have.
Millions.
I mean, honestly, I guarantee you half the world's population has heard the story of Jonah and the great fish. I mean, that's just about, I would almost be willing to guarantee that. And all we have is 27 verses to tell us that story out of this book. Yet the impression that Jonah has made on us has, well, Jonah was about 400 years after Samson, so you're talking 2,600 years ago this guy lived. And yet each and every one of us in here have heard of him. Most of us know, just about all of us know that he was, swallowed by a great fish and spent 3 days there. That's an impression. That's an amazing impression on your life. Now let's get down to the next one that was already mentioned. Let's talk about an impression, lasting impression of this guy. There was a guy that lived about 2,000 years ago. Anybody know who this is? Jesus. He walked on the earth about 2,000 years ago. And raise your hands, don't blurt out. What do we know about Jesus? Tell me something.
He got nailed to the cross.
He got nailed to the cross. Just like
He died for our sins.
he died for our sins. Yes.
He was God's son.
born. He provided food for those when there was no food to provide. He resurrected. Was he resurrected or did he resurrect? He rose. He defeated death on his own.
He was God's son.
He was God's son.
He rose from the dead 3 days
3
later.
days later.
The large majority of his life is not recorded in the scripture, like the last 3 years, a little bit around his 13th birthday, and then basically his birth. That's pretty much all
And
we have.
that's not all that we all actually know about his life here on earth. Yes.
He made a blind man see it.
He made a blind man see.
He was covered over.
Well, he didn't actually run away. He was there and he stayed. Yes. He walked on water. He is the gospel. Created life. Where do we know? Just a little extra credit here. How do we know he created life? Where do we get that from? There is a verse. There's 5 verses that we really key on about that. Now that's not an easy.
Genesis 1 through 5.
No.
We're talking about things that Jesus has No, really, done it for was like one First time. John 1:1, I think.
Yeah.
You're getting close
First
to
John
it.
1 is
Not 1 John.
John 3 about the word.
No,
John 1 through 4, and in verse 14. And that's what tells us that Jesus is the life and what created life. And then we flip back to Genesis, and in Genesis 3, I think it is where Jesus is described as the Word, which then goes back to that John thing. So we know that he's the creator of life. What else do we know about Jesus? Yes, sir.
He told the fishermen to go and on the outside.
And they caught so many fish, they couldn't even hardly get them in. They thought they was going to sink the boat. Sounds about like me as a fisherman, but that's. Yes, sir. Absolutely. We created a woman from a man's rib. That's a good one.
first public miracle was turned under the line with.
That's correct, it was, yes ma'am. We'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Let there be lightnings.
That's right. What else? Will, anybody, come on, Will. Well, not the 99 part, Dave. Hey, you're close. 99, Sarah and Abraham having Isaac. But you're right on the rest of it. Yeah.
And was it like?
No, not married. But now Sarah, well, actually, I think Sarah would have been about, I think Sarah was about 90, if I remember right. Because it talks about Abraham being about 100 years old. And I believe there's somewhere that tells us that Sarah was about 50 years old. But don't hold me to that, I may be.
I'm almost positive she was not here 91.
Yeah, I think, I'm thinking that, and it's been so long since I studied it every day, that I don't know. Yeah.
Didn't he say let the water have a big space between them?
The void between the firmament and the earth, yes. Very good, yes. Go ahead. Bring it on, bro.
I was playing.
No, yeah,
I
I've
don't
got,
live, I don't live in.
yeah, you do.
I'm from the country.
Yeah,
He was born to a bunch.
he was.
What already said that.
Yes, Peter, do you love him 3 times? See, there's, you're working, and you got something? Somebody else? Yeah, Will?
Didn't you like drop like 12
Well, it matters.
yeah, well,
He stopped the visions.
Yes, that's correct. Now, let me tell you this. All right, go ahead.
He left, like, not let, but like he had someone walk the water.
Yeah, he, and not only he, but he, yeah,
He also did.
yeah. Who else was it? Who was
One of the fish, wasn't it Peter?
it? Peter, that's correct.
he wept over Lazarus.
He wept over Lazarus. She was not. Yeah. No, but I knew that was the way, but I wasn't going to say I knew it. All right, yes, ma'am.
He separated the Red Sea.
He separated the Red Sea, that's right, okay.
There's us.
Come on with it.
Marquez.
Marquez, come on.
If you don't say it, I'm not letting you play basketball.
Come on, Marquez.
I don't know.
Come on, you gotta be on the
Hey.
side.
Most likely just candy.
Remember, I told you, you don't want to put your part in it now, so you got to jump right
I
on
feel
it.
like we want to be like Marquez.
All right, let me tell you on this thing, and I know that we all know this. The thing that I know about Jesus is that because of him, I get a chance to live eternally. I get a chance to be reunited with a relationship with God that does not know sin, that does not know suffering, that does not know pain, that does not know death, it don't know anything bad. And that's all because of Jesus, and because, as we talked about, he resurrected from death. What did that mean? I mean, that he did that he died, and then he...
I don't think anyone mentioned the obvious, which was, he was a man. He was
fully man, but what?
and fully man.
That's correct. He is a one of a kind.
Yeah.
There's never been anyone like. What did S.M. Lockard say? There's never been anyone like him, and there will never be anyone like him. He's one of a kind. He was fully just like you and me. He was fully this. Flesh, blood, bled, hurt, that's right. He was a fisherman, which meant he was awesome. He loved fishermen, you know. But he was also a carpenter. I mean, he worked. He got out there like we do. And he worked, and he earned his keep, and he done those kind of things. He was a man. But then he was also God. He was the one that created the world. He was the one that parted the Red Sea. He was the one. How did he do this? Because that was God, but it was Jesus, because they're all the same. Man, holy my, get in heaven. But he what? He created humans. And this is all. This is Jesus. And what? Let me ask y'all this. Let me ask you this. How many verses in the Bible are about Jesus? All of them. I was fixing to say.
Jesus is.
That's right. There are 31,102 verses about Jesus in the Bible.
I'm here in the Bible.
31,000.
I know.
You see, every verse in this Bible is about Jesus. But so he's actually took up the grand stage. But you know what? Here's a guy that lived 2,000 years ago, who only lived to be about 33 years old and was only known for about 3 or 4 years. Yet the impression. How many people in this world do you think knows about him?
Everybody. Even the ones that claim that they don't believe
That's
God.
exactly right. What about a guy that's born on a marooned island or a deserted island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and never speaks to another human being in their whole life? Does that person know about Jesus?
Still has a sense of a higher power.
Because in Romans it tells us that because of creation we know, regardless. So yes, everybody that has ever lived, and when I say that, I'm talking about people from Adam. And you said, but Jesus wasn't in the Old Testament, but yet they knew about him. David spoke about him about 4,000 years ago. He said, everybody knows him, even though there's that little bit of time that this earth has had. That's a lasting impression. Now, let me get y'all over here because I don't want to keep y'all too late. I want to read a couple things to you. First thing I'm going to read to you is from the book of Mark. And Josh, I put a lot of stuff on there, but that was just, we went along with these stories. And if anybody wants to read about that stuff, now they know where it's at. But I'm going to turn to the book of Mark. And I'm going to read to you Mark chapter 11, verse 18. Listen to this. Mark 11, 18. Mark 11, 18 says this. And the scribes and chief priests heard it and sought how they might destroy him. They're talking about Jesus. For they feared him. Why? Because all the people were astonished at his doctrine. What that means is all the people were super impressed by the things that he taught and he said. So in that little bit of time, he was such an impression on people that the known world wanted to kill him. And they ended up killing him. So you figure that. That's what kind of impression this guy made. That's the kind of mark he put on it. And he impressed people. Now, I tell you that to tell you this. Or ask you, first to ask you this. What kind of impression do we make on people? Do you think any of us in here are going to make an impression that on somebody 50 years from now?
Yeah.
Yes?
My kids.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me ask this. What kind of impression then are we making on people that we only cross their paths? Kind of like Joffrey, the guy that I was in basic training with. I mean, we never had a conversation. We really didn't. We knew who each other was. We was in the same country. And I know when we crossed paths in Japan, even though we didn't even talk, we didn't see each other. And we both knew who each other was. So there was an impression made. What kind of impression do we make? Do what? What'd you say? I've been all over this world. That's not a big deal. You want to see the world, join the Navy. I'll take you all over the place. Or you can get involved in a firefighting and you see a lot of all this. But what kind of impression do we make on people that we just cross the path? That we spend a little bit of time with, or that we may not even spend time with, we actually just kind of cross. What kind of impression are we making? What kind of impression do you think you make? Anybody? To just somebody that's just a ship passing in the night kind of thing? We don't, not an actual relationship, but rather just a kind of a knowledge of each other. What do you think people think of? What is their impression of you? Anybody? Let me ask it this way. What would you like for your impression to be on those people that don't get to really know you well? Huh? That's a very vague answer. What do you want to impress on people? turn mine on. Anybody? Follower of God. I'll read one more verse to us. Book of Philippians, chapter 2, verse 3. Listen to this. Philippians 2, verse 3. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves. What does that mean? What does it mean to not to do things in strife? Anybody? Not to do things in strife. What does that mean? Huh?
Never do anything that's self-centered.
That wouldn't be strife.
At odds with others.
At odds with others. That's right. Don't do things because you're at odds with people. What about vainglory? What about that? Yourself. There you go. That's the self part. That's the vanity. That's the me. Me. Now, although I'm making it look good that I'm doing this for all these people, I'd rather do it for something for me. See, we were told don't do that. And now, do you think that applies to just to the people that we know? Or is that worth to live by all those people that we are going to have a short but lasting impression? You see, when you do things this way, not through strife and vainglory, you do it selflessly, you aren't concerned with what you might get out of it. There is somebody that's going to see that. Somebody that you don't have a conversation with. Somebody that you don't know. Nothing. That they're going to see that and they're going to say, wow. And you know what? Today, when they see you do it, they may not recognize what it really is. But sometime in their life, they may come to the realization that that's what Christ is like. Because you see, me and you, as Christians, we might just be the only Jesus that somebody ever sees. You say, I'm not Jesus, you're right. None of us are. But what does it mean to be a Christian? What does that actually mean, Christian? It's close. I mean, you're on the right path. It means to be Christ-like. That's what it means. That means that I'm going to do all I can to do it at the way Jesus Christ did it. That's what that means. So, when I say you might be the only Christ or the only Jesus that somebody will ever see in their life, that means that this thing that you do today, the decision you make on how to be towards people and how that impression that you'll make on those that see you around you, that may be the difference between that person spending eternity in heaven or in hell. Our actions affect way more than just us. Our actions affect everybody that sees or hears or whatever about us. Our actions may just be the difference between heaven and hell for somebody else. So the impression that we are making matters. So what kind of impression do you leave?
Our actions also
Well, that's,
along that.
it is. It's because it's not just our words. It's our actions. It's our words. It's our deeds. It's everything about us. It may be the look on our face.
And I think, like, being a Christian, like you said, is being Christ-like. Some of us, we can't be like Christ in the raising Lazarus or parting the sea or doing all that. But we can, I mean, he washed his disciples' feet.
Yes.
You know, he defended the woman at the well that
Yes.
everyone else judged. There were so many things that he led by example.
That's
He
right.
lived in his life.
And it's about
That
selflessness. That's the key, is that we're selfless, that we're not, it's not about us, but rather it's about others. It's you know, like it says, we're lowly, we don't think too highly of ourselves, but rather we try to lift up everybody around us, even above
I mean,
us.
he was Jesus.
He was Jesus. And I mean, he was man and God, just like you said earlier.
I mean,
And
he was the ultimate, like,
he was the ultimate.
the
Yeah, he was, yeah. There's actually no argument there. That one we don't get to debate. He is,
But
he
he
does.
still did those things.
And he did, well, think about that. Here's a guy that literally created life. And he washed some nasty old fishermen's feet. That's probably not the impression we get of somebody that is the greatest of all time, is it? Not in the way that we see and understand society, because that's the way they're going to define it. That the more important you are, the greater you are, and the higher you are. I mean, that's not true. The more important you are, the lowlier you are. You are a servant. The more you serve, the greater you are. What does it say? The first will be last, and the last will be first.
And I say that sometimes even to the boys, like you can live this life highly with the world or lowly with the Lord. If you have to choose one of those two paths, you can't be both.
That's right. And you can't. You got to. I mean,
Because he took the low road.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, and that's what it means for us to be Christ-like, is to deny ourselves and put other people before us always. And that's the impression that we should be leaving on the world. And it's
hard.
And it's extremely hard. Yeah, I mean, it's y'all.
I mean, listen, the people like my ladies in the church here knows, God knows Josh knows, I mean, I'm selfish by nature, I am.
But by
I
nature-
want what I want.
Hey, by nature, all of us are selfish.
So it very much goes against the flesh.
It does. No, I mean, the flesh is selfish. That's period. There's no, I mean, that's not even a question. We all are, every one of us. The difference is, and that goes back to that, those fruits of the Spirit. We can see where people are at. A Christian can see where another Christian is at in their walk with the Lord a lot of times, as long as they are advanced in their walk, because the fruits of the Spirit. The fruits of the Spirit, we obtain that stuff by reading this thing and praying a lot. If we're doing that daily, then we're growing. And when we're growing, we're becoming more meek, and we're becoming more humble, and we're becoming more lowly. And we're doing those things, yet we're feeling so much better, so much higher in being that way. That's the thing. That all comes from our relationship with the Lord. So, that's true. So what impression are you going to make? That's what we're talking about tonight. Make a good impression because it matters. It matters to somebody out there. It matters a whole lot to somebody out there.
You always have to remember your actions, because your actions in the past can make someone have the worst impression.
And they can. And that's right.
I mean,
Hey, and you know what? I mean, it's like the old saying goes, you may work, for a year to build this reputation, and you can literally tear it down in a minute. I mean, and you can't get it back in a minute. You lose it, and you start to work. That's right, and bring up. Let me tell you, that's another thing about being a Christian. Have I always done it all right? Have I made bad impressions? Absolutely. Do I still make bad impressions? Yes, I
Yes,
do.
you do.
But
that was Henry.
thank you for that support.
Yeah, I'll believe
But the thing is that we don't let that stuff define us. We are sinners saved by grace. And luckily it's grace, which means I didn't earn it, but God gave it to me anyway. He had mercy on me, and he gave it. By grace I am saved. So don't let those mistakes get you down, because we're going to make those. But continue to strive to be Christ-like. And when I mess up, I mess up. Accept it, own it, apologize, do whatever it is that's necessary, and keep moving forward. So that impression that you make. Now let me tell you one of the things that will impress somebody. And that's when you mess up, and then you go back and you tell them, I apologize, I was wrong. And when you do that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you can cause somebody to just stop in their tracks. I mean, literally like that. Because you did recognize it, and you were wrong. And now you're impressing them with the fact that you can accept that you are human and you fail. And you want to do it better. So that's the impressions that those impressions count. One thing I can say, and it saddens me that I know that there's things in my past that goes against us, but I don't want it to be that anybody don't go to heaven because of some impression they got from something like that.
But I think that's what that leads that to remind us of, is because we're all guilty of that. We let negative impressions
And we have.
based off of decisions or choices.
Yes.
But also that should lead us to be more quick to extend grace
That's right.
to
We all need it, and but it also should encourage us. Yeah. And that
Sometimes
is,
we have nasty, like I had, like, you know, like, there's certain things people I have impressions of based on, like, personal experiences or individual experiences.
listen, I'm a
But I
first
probably
impression
should
person.
extend more grace.
I am one of the world's worst. The first impression I get from you, it's hard for you to break that in me. You know what I'm saying? It, like, whatever I get as my first impression of when I meet somebody or something, it's hard for me to change my mind about it. In my natural self. And God allows me to be able to do that a lot better than I once could. But we all have those problems. And we do have to be. We have been given grace, we must be grateful. But also in all of that, it should break our hearts to do better. You know, as somebody said, his office is manifold. So is this world. So in other words, there's many. We could go on and on and on in many directions on all this. But the thing is make your impressions good impressions. Work hard for that. All right. Any questions, comments, anything? Anybody? Didn't get there yet. Yes, sir? No, I think questions, comments, anything like that. Anybody? Oh boy, y'all good ones. All right, prayer request. I'm gonna start with the ladies tonight. Yep, y'all please remember Lewis, Powell, and Janet, and all the family. Me and Mom and Daddy went up and got to see him today and talked with him just for a minute. But I just remember them. They really, really, really need your prayers right now. That's for sure. Yes. Yep. Let's keep on praying for Granny. And all right, who's got the little blue balls? Well, let me put it like this. Let's see them get picked up real quick. See, Lewis, Janet, Granny. Thank you, Will. Appreciate that. All right. Sound like a plan to me. All right, guys. Yes, ma'am.
Daddy.
Okay. That's right. And y'all do remember the fires. I mean, even though we got some rain and some rain coming in, there's a lot of dead now, what we call 1,000-hour fuels. 1,000-hour fuel takes a whole lot of long duration rain to put out, so it's still going to be raining for a while yet. Yep, y'all continue to remember Abby Peel as she heals from her surgery. Yes, Corey. Yes, y'all too, please remember Miss Melanie Freeman. She is not doing well right now. So please remember her. Prayer. And y'all do pray for Faith. Faith tried to rob a home run and she did a somersault over the fence playing softball and landed on it. She broke her fall with her head and neck.
Let's go. That's what I say. That's why I say when I do the slot. I can only play slot head cock, so you need to break his neck.
Last time I did that, I broke my hand.
Yeah, but anyways, she sprained her neck. Seems to be doing a whole lot better. So I'm pretty prayers to continue to pray. To remember, and I hope that she knows where offense is next time. I know that. Yes, sir. Grandma. Awesome. Yes, sir.
Also,
I would like to bring to your attention, I got a notice, or I guess a notice from Voices of Martyrs today about there's some pretty severe Christian persecution going on in Mozambique in Africa right now. So when you're remembering Ashaku and Nigerian Christians, in all our persecuted brothers and sisters in Christ, remember what those in Mozambique as well. Yes, sir. A good job. yeah. Please do remember the Ukrainians and the Russians.
I saw this thing like Russia said where all the countries that like not really like not really like.
Yeah, yeah, we've been pretty big for Russia.
So I love it.
That's how they became named.
What?
Yeah, and,
His home?
well, they did determine they did not have an infrastructure.
Okay.
But they didn't say what.
Is he able to walk?
Yeah, as far as I know, the only thing he was,
He wasn't at the night that it was his son that was, they were thinking it was his son.
yeah, but he ended up getting real disoriented and numbness in his hand.
Okay, well, but what I'm saying is he's got to where he can walk again.
From what I understand, yes. But like I said, they now ruled out a mini stroke, which is good, but, don't know exactly what it is. Right. Well, and that's the last I heard. That was from today. So y'all do remember Dwight performing? Yes, ma'am? Yep. Mr. Jacob Bechtel, y'all continue to remember him. I've not heard anything new lately, which is a good thing. So, the last report was a good report. The Lord willing, that's continuing to be a good report. All right, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Melissa
Yes, absolutely.
and Dwayne Thorpe. He works in the shop.
Yeah.
DOT.
Yes.
He's in an accident. Someone named good. Got run over by a vehicle.
Lord, I-
He's in UAP. Had a few surgeries on his hip and leg. And he's having one eye socket. He may have to have surgery on him.
Statement?
Yeah, he come through the leg and hip surgery. Okay.
Let's go for that.
He's able to talk to you, so.
That's good, that's good. Glad to hear that. Yep, y'all continue to remember Rush, anything new on him? Yes, sir? Ready?
That's
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
My friend's name is Ashley Smith.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we needed to get her.
And,
She had her doctor's appointment today with the heart doctor, and he felt pretty good, but her pain is not heart related, but more supposed to make sure that she is not getting she's been,
yes, and that's pretty obvious because she's over there, her man stroke, she can still that.
Alex and Robin Harrison on there. You had hernia surgery earlier this week and is having some difficulties recovering.
It can be a very difficult surgery to recover from, so.
And her wife recovered.
All right, anybody else? Yes, ma'am?
I'll go.
Our government, absolutely. Y'all always remember our government and those that are in charge, leading our nation. Always do that. Anybody else?
Michael Hightower.
oh,
Who?
Michael Hightower.
Michael Hightower?
He actually was at the game, but he's in a wheelchair.
it was very good. I mean, like,
I
it's how
talked
my
to him,
heart.
I talked to him for a little bit, but Josh, you see, he can't, it's bad. And he said like when he's in the bed, like one leg is like at least
And he
Right.
he physically looked,
he did.
he physically didn't look well, just nothing about him.
You're missing a hip joint out of your body and it's hard to look at.
He didn't look good.
So just remember him, I mean, he's got a long race.
All you need to remember him. It's a pretty rough
And
spot.
I know that Carson said that KK, she's got like a fruit and board approval, she checks out for like third period, every day, is that what she said? To go home
Go
and sit,
home, yep.
like to pull her duty,
Yeah.
when she's helping care for.
Well, y'all, and remember her, she's that's a
I'm
load.
sure everyone's doing that.
Oh, yeah, I guarantee
Pulling
you.
their cart,
Yes.
so that family is just, you know,
Oh, That's a difficult situation.
Financially,
That's what I was fixing to say. That's something I think we need to,
it really does, I mean,
That's-
I mean, I know she works at the post office, but I know he had his own business, and they were live, and I think.
and all those surgeries
What
that
happened?
happen, I mean, like, it's like 17, 18 surgeries.
yeah, it's unbelievable.
Right now, he don't even have a hip.
I took his hip out.
Yeah, they got to
Did
try
they have
to,
cancer on it, or?
no, infection got in it. And just like, you remember when Joyce,
Yeah.
same thing they had to do with Joyce. I mean, it got infection in there, and it's almost impossible to get out. And they tried, and now they've literally had to take the joint out, the hip joint out, and I think they're leaving it out for 3 months, I believe, to try to get all infection out of his body.
Can't do anything.
Which is probably why he was so unwell.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
The infection and the fact that you're missing. I mean, that's not a natural
Just
thing.
like it's put on weight or something like that, just swollen almost, yeah, it just.
I probably can imagine.
But we definitely, I mean, that needs to be a research thing, 'cause just all over.
I'll do remember. Anybody else? Anybody? Who's gonna lead us in prayer tonight? Go right ahead if you want to. There we go. Y'all get ready. Let's pray. Amen. Works for me. I like it. Thank you, buddy.
Good job, bud.
All right, everybody. Be good. I'll see you next time. Oh, yeah, hey, everybody, if you've got your offerings and tithes, please put them in. I'm kind. Put them in the basket.